Heraclitus is one of the few pre-Socratic philosophers whose thoughts were actually recorded by himself, rather than being word of mouth or passed down by historians. As such, this makes his work of extreme interest. Supposedly, this work, referred to by commentators as the Book, was deposited in a temple in the ancient city of Ephesus. However, it is only accessible in fragmentary form, and a correct way to read the remaining fragments is controversial. This isn't helped by Heraclitus's oracular and obscure writing style. In many ways, reading Heraclitus feels similar to reading something by the postmodern thinkers of the 20th century, full of puns and hints, without much of anything being said that is definitive. However, from these fragments, and what others in the ancient world have said about him, we can glean a great deal of what Heraclitus thought and the influence he would have on the fathers of Western thought. Firstly, it has to be said that whilst Heraclitus was focused on human affairs, his attitude towards people in general was that only a select few intellectual elites would be capable of understanding his ideas. This probably contributed somewhat to his obscure style of writing. He sees himself less of a philosopher, but more of an agent of the logos, which is Greek for dialogue, word, or speech. Basically, he thinks there is an essential truth to the world that is obvious to those intelligent enough, but beyond the grasp of the masses. He takes himself to be conveying this truth, for he is one of those bright enough to see it. He says, "Of this word's being, forever do men prove to be uncomprehending, both before they hear and once they have heard it. For, although all things happen according to this word, they are like the unexperienced, experiencing words and deeds, such as I explain when I distinguish each thing according to its nature and show how it is. Other men are unaware of what they do when they are awake, just as they are forgetful of what they do when they are asleep." One of Heraclitus's main doctrines regarding the nature of the cosmos is that all things are subject to constant change. They are always in flux. Those stepping into rivers, staying the same other, and other waters flow. That's right. Heraclitus is the origin of the idea that we never step into the same river twice, though this is a simplistic translation of Heraclitus's more verbose form of expression, originating from Plato's dialogue Cratylus, in which he states, "Heraclitus, I believe, says that all things pass and nothing stays, and comparing existing things to the flow of a river, he says you could not step into the same river twice." The point Heraclitus is making is not simply about rivers. His observation is not that things never remain the same, but that some things in the cosmos retain their constancy by changes in their constituent matter. The river remains the same through the flowing and changing of its water. In fact, for Heraclitus, the notions of change and permanency are always tied together. Heraclitean flux is more than mere change, but the subsistence of permanent structure due to change. He says, "As the same things in us are living and dead, waking and sleeping, young and old, for these things have changed around are those, and those in turn having changed are these." Weird stuff. The flux is really a particular instance of what has come to be known in Heraclitean doctrine as the unity of opposites. That is, all beings and things can possess opposite qualities, albeit not at the same time, and one quality determines the emergence of the other. For example, you cannot be dead without first having been alive, you cannot be awake without first having been asleep, and you cannot be old without first having been young. Heraclitus is trying to draw attention to the fact that the same thing exhibits contrary properties at different times. Through flux, what seem to be completely opposed states or concepts are intimately connected with one another. Heraclitus is interpreted by modern standards to be a type of material monist. This is the idea that there is only one base substance in the universe, and all other things are composed of it. For Heraclitus, the base substance is fire. All things in reality are manifestations of flame. This wasn't an idea alien to the pre-Socratics, for Thales believed that the base substance was water, Anaximander air, and for Democritus and his followers it was the atom. But Heraclitus espoused fire as the basic constituent of the cosmos, and all things are permutations in this primordial fire. The notion that fire is the basic constituent of the universe may seem bizarre and ultimately incorrect. However, Heraclitus did touch upon something important in his cosmology. He denied that the universe was created, instead advocating the idea that it has always been. He says, "The cosmos, the same of all, no god or man did create, but it ever was, is, and will be, ever-living fire, kindling in measures and being quenched in measures." Indeed, Heraclitus also presented a basic form of empiricism, the idea that we know things through what we are presented with by the senses. In fragment 55 of the book, he states, "The things of which there is sight, hearing, experience, I prefer." This leads Heraclitus to criticizing the leading intellectual authorities of his time, such as Pythagoras, for thinking that understanding the cosmos is done through collecting and amassing information. For Heraclitus, understanding the logos, or the word, of the cosmos is achieved through proper observation of it through the senses. However, most people are ignorant of this and just follow popular bards and treat the crowd as their instructor, not realizing that the many are base while the few are noble. What we can piece together of Heraclitus's thoughts seems to be that from the fragments available, he is strikingly similar to modern thinkers. Firstly, he seems to have been the first thinker to espouse a form of process philosophy. This is a type of philosophy which sees the universe as being what it is in virtue of a process of change or becoming. We'll see this come up again a lot later in the work of Hegel, whose idea of thinking and logic getting themselves moving through a synthesis of opposites clearly owes a lot to Heraclitus. Secondly, Heraclitus' emphasis of evidence and knowledge gained through the senses makes him a notable early empiricist, long before the scientific method adopted empiricism as its foundation. Despite his elitism and his penchant for obscurantism, Heraclitus is no doubt one of the most important thinkers of the ancient world, and when his work was brought to Athens by Cratylus, it became difficult for the Athenians not to engage with in some way. Far from a sage or a mystic like Pythagoras, Heraclitus held to a rather simple idea, that paying close attention to the way the world is for yourself will yield true wisdom.